Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's Livestream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream.
All right, you guys, welcome to my live stream. I'm Joshua Kemble. I'm going to be working on Not Death But Love, the Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, page 170. So last night, we kind of got through, trying to think. I think we got through 2 panels of page 170 of shading. And so tonight I'm going to kind of try to finish up those panels and then maybe do some of the color work, depending, but we're definitely going to finish the shading. So let's get into it. So, yeah, let's talk. We're working on page 170. If you guys aren't familiar, I just put out an album called Empty Rooms, and it might be worth checking out. It's a pretty cool, kind of emotional, darker album of rock and roll music. And I put that out on music streaming platforms everywhere. And I'm currently just kind of trying to get through the comic and stuff. We got Paul Pate here saying, "Good morning, Josh." What time is it for you, Paul? That's nuts. That's cool that you're up. How you doing, bud? Hopefully all is going okay. I have appreciated your commercial quite a bit. Tried to give it as much airplay as possible because it's awesome. I don't know how Paul manages to do such amazing animation. It's pretty cool. So yeah, we're just kind of shooting the breeze, hanging out, and working on comics. Paul said it's 3 a.m. Yeah, I feel you. I'm kind of thinking, because like last night I went pretty late on this, so I'm thinking that we might just shade the page. I was thinking about shading and coloring it, and it's like, I don't know, I gotta kind of survive tomorrow. But yeah, I get it, because I've definitely had nights where I've been up, or I should say mornings where I've been up early. How's life treating you, Paul? I'm doing good. I had a pretty good day today. I had work and then school. And on days where I do that, because they're night courses, it's like I'll basically get home. If I have time between work and class, I'll like shovel food and then nap if I can. If I can get in like a 10-minute nap, maybe a 20-minute nap before school, that's awesome. And then I'll get home and just kind of start working. Usually after a bit of a nap. So I've been living on power naps lately. I think I'm old, so I can do late nights, but I have to do frequent little bursts of naps so that I can basically survive the onslaught of stuff. Not a complaint. It's all good things. So I'd rather be super busy doing all good things that I like than not so busy doing things that I hate. I don't know if that makes sense. So life is good. It's just busy and exhausting. We're working on Not Death But Love. There's slow progress, but it is steadily happening. I'm doing some shading on this page where we have Elizabeth, who is finally at her wit's end after all that laudanum. The laudanum is catching up to her. As well as Sophie's influence on her, right? Because Sophie's just pretty much spoon feeding her laudanum, and giving her dark thoughts of her brother. Paul said, I fell asleep really hard early, woke up and can't go back to sleep. Yeah, nights like that can be rough. Well, stick around, Paul. I'll put you to sleep. I'm a good cure for insomnia. You just listen to me for 5 minutes and you'll be out. Trust me. So I recorded some music earlier on an earlier stream today, right before kind of doing this. I'm trying to keep those two streams a little separate for anybody who's not super interested in seeing me piece together songs. I'll usually title those music stream, and then these I'll try to title art stream or comic stream. Let me make sure I did that actually. Well, I guess it's too late now. Paul said the end of the wits. Yeah. The wits would be good character names. I think wits would be a good character name. And then you could have it be the end of the wits. Could be a final chapter. That's your next that is your next detective comic. The bad guys can be the wits. And then the big catchphrase after 200 pages, right, of the next Detective Perez versus the wits. Detective Perez at the last page will go, I'm at my wit's end. And that's the whole thing. It was just building up to him looking, it's like a panel of him, trying to solve this unsolvable crime. And he looks at the reader and goes, looks like I'm at my wit's end. And then it says the end. All right. You guys should check out Detective Perez though. It's well written. Unlike my bad jokes, Detective Perez is very, very well done. Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting season of just crazy busy. Paul says, you're joking, but that's how it is. Yeah, it is. I will say, man, yeah, it's been just a crazy season where my wife was talking about where she wants to go. We're thinking about visiting family for Thanksgiving. And it was 2 days ago, she asked me, she's like, hey, do you think we can leave on this date or whatever? And I'm like, I can't think a week ahead right now. I literally can't. Because if I think a week ahead with everything I've got to get done, my brain just kind of collapses. It doesn't, I don't know. My head collapses and then I'm asking myself, where is my mind? You know what I'm saying? But more seriously, I literally will just kind of lose wherever I'm at. Cause it's I kind of have to take this latest season, just has to be day by day. Kind of, and I'm sure we're going to do the thing, because we talked about it a little more today for Thanksgiving. head out of state and visit some people. But it was just funny how my brain just like shuts down when I have to think like a couple weeks ahead. I had forgotten how school and work is, you know. I did this a couple times. Not my first rodeo. But it's definitely like an interesting reminder of what all you have to go through to get like a BFA or an MFA. Now it's like getting a credential. Whew. Yeah, it's a lot of hoops, a lot of plans and stuff like that. And that on top of the book is just like quite a bit to do. But the music things kept me really sane throughout it too. I really like making music. I think it's like a nice reset. I think I've described it that way, but I do think having multiple outlets for creativity is a good thing. I'm sure, Paul, you probably feel that about like animation, you know, where it's like, you know, if you're working on your comic and you get overloaded, you have your animation, or you work on animation, you get overloaded, you got your comic, you know. It's just like a nice reset to kind of change it a little bit. Paul said, good to be busy though, hang in there. Yeah, I like being busy. This is just a busy season. I've finally reached an age, like when I was younger, these kind of seasons would like freak me out a little bit, but I don't know. You get older, you start realizing there's just kind of seasons for things. Like the Beatles song. Was it? Wait, that wasn't the Beatles who did. Wait, was that? That was the Beatles. Oh my gosh. My brain. Anyhow. So I'm kind of trying to get this page going. And at the rate it's going, I'm definitely going to be probably just finishing the shading for this stream. But I'll hang out with you guys whilst I shade. So there's a couple of things interesting. There was a vote in California. It looks like Prop 50 is going to go through, which is interesting and kind of cool. I'm a fan. What else? A lot of drama locally. Just, you know, like news in local areas and stuff like that. Yeah. But I've just been like kind of in my own little bubble. I don't know. This is one of the fun things about art. I always tell my students this too. One of the fun things about art is, you know, and right now the cool thing is, I'm teaching art, so I'm doing a lot of demos during the day. It's a lot of drawing. It's like I'm drawing all the time. And the nice thing about drawing all the time is you just don't have the wherewithal to kind of focus on anything outside of drawing. And I think that's a good place to be. I mean, it's funny, like one of my college classes, one of the teachers was giving instructors advice on how to kind of create a chill classroom environment. And they had us coloring book pages. And we're like, this is a great thing to do. And I was like, I'm so lucky to teach art, because like that's pretty much what we do. Paul says, I have a completely unhealthy approach to my artwork. I get immersed and I'd like to be more balanced. I kind of get the same way. That's why I like, so I'm drawing all day. This is kind of where I'm getting is like, a lot of what I'm doing right now is drawing. So what that ends up doing is just like my coherent brain that's present and paying attention to things going on around in the world and stuff like that just gets consumed by just getting in the zone. So the plus side is I'm in the zone a lot, you know, drawing and instructing art and stuff. But like I'm like an absent-minded professor outside of that. Like I have no idea what's going on. I'm kind of surprised I was able to like follow the Dodger games, you know, because like man, you know, like for all I know in the news, like half the world could have just disappeared and I wouldn't have noticed, you know, because I'm just in my little hobbit hole doing art. Tankersley said, howdy. How you doing, Tankersley? Yeah, we're working on finishing that shading from yesterday. If you guys, after this stream, of course, but if you guys do want to check out music, make sure you check out Joshua Kemble on Spotify and check out Empty Rooms, my newest album. I'm pretty proud of it. Tankersley, you're joining us. Paul was having trouble sleeping. I am talking about how there's like this cool thing about art. And this is why I think we're lucky to do what we do. A lot of people like literally will like pay money to go to a like one of those paint and sips or something. Paul said the World Series is a whole thing. The World Series was beautiful this year, though. So good. So proud of the Dodgers. That was a killer World Series. But yeah, Paul said what a series. Yeah, it was. Tankersley said sleep is overrated. Well, there used to be this saying, especially when I was in my 20s, all of us upstart designers and illustrators that I went to school with, we always used to, quote that sleep is for the dead. Because when you start in a creative field, you really, it's funny. Like young artists will sometimes ask for advice and stuff. And that's one of the pieces of advice you almost don't want to give because it's not necessarily great, but it's like, you're probably not going to sleep for a while. like, like you'd like it to be an industry where you can sleep a lot, but it's like you got to be kind of hungry, especially when you're starting. And being hungry, like just imagine, like there's a reason they call it being hungry. It's like imagine trying to sleep when you're hungry. It's hard to sleep when you're hungry, and if you're hungry to get into a creative field for a living, you got to be hungry. It almost has to be like literal hunger. Which isn't great, right? On the health, but I will say if I had slept more earlier in my career, I probably wouldn't have had as much of a career, which is nuts. Not fun to say. Paul said, "I'll sleep when I dead." Almost killed me. Yeah, me too. That's the thing. It's a horrible thing. Like now, I really value my sleep. I will say though, having kids just changes that whole dynamic. I don't know. It's funny. I think back to like the times where I thought I was like super busy, or thought, like I was hardcore for like missing sleep. And then you have a kid and you're like, sleep becomes, it's almost like having a child trains you to sleep. So now I'm like right now I'm in a really, I don't know, like a stage where I thrive on power naps. Tons of power naps. Whenever there's a window where I can nap, I'm like, I'm in. But we're getting there. We're getting there. And it's all good things. Again, like I kind of said at the top, like, there's a couple ways you can live your life, and I'd rather be tired and overloaded with things I like than having my brain just slowly like get so bored. I don't know if that makes sense. Like right now it's very stimulating. I like all the different things I'm learning, and I really like being a student too. That's the thing that's bizarre. I think that's probably why I ended up getting a master's degree too, is like I enjoy the process of learning. I like being in a scenario where there's something I don't know and I'm able to kind of engage my mind a little bit, that's just, I don't know. It's just the way my personality works. Like I really enjoy it. It's probably why I wanted to go into teaching, because like I very much enjoy that. Tankersley said naps are my jam. Paul said, I'll be out of commission all December for my surgery, probably watching a lot of YouTube, back like brand new in January. Dude, I really hope you're okay, Paul, and I hope the surgery goes well. And I wish you luck. And if you are out of commission, make sure you stop by on YouTube. if you're capable of being on YouTube at the time, say hi and stuff, and don't feel free to reach out outside of YouTube just to, let me know how you're doing and stuff. Surgery is not fun. We have this going on, but that's going to be rough to like miss a whole month being out. Tankersley also gave you best of luck. All right, so we are doing our thing here. I hope that's, yeah, I got to do a new layer. Paul said I'll be here. Nice. Well, I'll try to make a lot of content too. Hang out and stuff. I really do appreciate YouTube because, like, you got to imagine doing these streams, I would just be up late, like working on stuff. And that's just like, that's just kind of how it was. It's like, you're going to kind of work on these things. And that's kind of the nature of cartooning. And it's funny, sometimes I'll kind of revert back to that. Like, there's definitely days where I get in the vibe of like, watching videos or something like that rather than just creating content. Sometimes it's fun to just kind of zone out and like listen to music or listen to an interesting podcast and work. Which is part of why I do this too, because I know it's fun to kind of have company when you're working. Paul said surgery should stop my tremors so I can draw more. Nice, Paul. Is it like a high risk one? I hope it's not like super high risk. That would be really cool though, if it can get you being able to draw a little more and focus a little more. Paul said, I loved working on my last book more because of YouTube. Yeah, that's the thing that's really cool about it. It's because I remember that was one of the hardest challenges of being a creative back in the day, was like you would have to do, just late nights, and a lot of it you'd like listen to music or audiobooks, and that kind of stuff. But it was a pretty, cartooning is a lonely endeavor, so it's nice to have the ability to kind of do this. I am aching to get back to working non-digitally though. So, which I do all day, when I teach. It's like, gosh, in the last 3 days, I've had to do like 6 city corners and 2-point perspective just for my different periods. I try to do a different one for each period just to kind of work along with them, show them how to do stuff. But it has reawakened lately. I really do want to get back to 2 stories, because I feel like there's something about like traditionally inking that I just absolutely adore, and I'd like to get back to. Although this has been really cool and I'm enjoying it. So, and then I'm sure halfway through that I'll probably miss this, because it's that whole grass is greener thing. Paul said not high risk. Oh, that's good. That's great. And Tankersley was mentioning Charles Schultz's shaking hands. Well, we all get that eventually, but I think Paul's got it a little worse than a lot of us. So hopefully that kind of helps with that issue, because that can be frustrating. Paul said, I enjoyed seeing some of the school projects you've shared. Yeah, I have a whole bunch I still haven't shared either. That album cover for Empty Rooms was another one of those school projects. I was just drawing something cool for Halloween and showing them 1 point perspective with like a room. I was like, here's how you draw a room. But also it was like Halloween time, so I did something a little spooky. All right, there we go. I want this inside here to be very shadowy. But I'd like to get back to 2 stories for sure. 2 stories, book 2 has to happen after this. But yeah, that World Series was amazing. It's definitely, I picked a good time to get into baseball again, you know. Because it's pretty epic. Some pretty great teams. I want to do let's get even bolder with our shadows. So we're just kind of doing some shading here. It's funny. Whenever I get to a page that has like less panels, I'm like, sweet, this will take less time. And then they end up taking about as much time. Do you guys have that? I don't know. I definitely have moments where I'm like, oh, cool, this page will take way less time. And then because it's bigger, it's like more detail. And so it still takes about the same. I will say coloring it'll go quicker. Because the method I'm using to color. Do. So we're going to go ahead and continue this. Oh, I think, was Paul saying that Tankersley's been sharing school projects? Did I misunderstand that, Paul? All right. We are doing our thing here. We're kind of working our way through. But it'll be kind of fun to see the election results as they pour in. I'm not sure where it's at right now, but last I looked, it was looking good. If you're of my persuasion, assuming that we're allowed to vote still, I think things are looking brighter. Unless they find a way to kind of like make that not possible. Which is possible right now. Being awake in the middle of the night makes me extra silly, said Paul. Yeah, I get really goofy at night. I think night was where... were you guys on the stream when I came up with Swiss Ware? I was like really tired. I was talking about Chris Ware and I accidentally said Swiss Ware. And we came up with this whole thing of like, it could be like an indie comic, you know, those parody comics, but it's like the most obscure parody comic in the world. Like 3 cartoonists would find it hilarious. But it'd be all about Chris Ware, but it's just it's pretty much like Jimmy Corrigan, the smartest kid on earth, except it's like he has like Swiss cheese for a head and it's Swiss Ware. Oh, Paul said I was talking about your school projects. Thanks. Yeah, it's been fun. I'm really trying, man. I want to be I want to do good work for those kids. I want to be the high school art teacher I never had. My high school art teacher wasn't awful. Like she was fine. It was just like she wasn't an art major, and we didn't really learn any fundamentals, and so you had to be like really driven to like kind of seek out. And she was very supportive of my work, so I don't want to belittle her or anything. She wasn't a bad person. She was a good person, but I had to like really seek out art feedback from other sources, because like we just didn't really get a lot of fundamentals in high school. And then like my wife had the opposite experience where her high school had like a cartooning class, and I was like, what? like, so they were like learning how to do like turnarounds and like character sheets and stuff like that, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. Paul said, I think some of my comments didn't go through. He said I made a dirty joke about Charles Schultz. I got it. Schultz's stuff. Have you guys? Well, anyhow, I've probably talked about this before, but Charles Schultz's 50s stuff is like the best. Have you? I don't know. I really like old school Snoopy, but I do admire that he kind of adapted his style for his hand movements and stuff. But a lot of people don't realize like how skilled that guy was. If you look at like, I guess a lot of people do realize he was a skilled storyteller, but I think sometimes cartoonists, younger cartoonists, aren't quite aware of like how good Schultz was like at his peak. And then you look at the old stuff and it's like, oh wow, that's like every style like Seth is doing, and these other cartoonists that are kind of more contemporary, they're all just kind of biting early Schultz. Paul said cartooning class in high school, amazing. Yeah. They had a really good art program. So I've always been really inspired by that. Because now that I'm teaching, I want to make sure I'm giving them, like, I want anyone who's taking my class to have some sense of fundamentals, like, the basic elements and principles of design, which go into all art. And it's like, if you have a pretty good overview of those things, like how to render, how to do perspective, how to draw by shape, just some of these basic things, you have like, if I had that at like 14, I would have had a huge head start. So that's kind of my goal. It's like anyone who wants to, hopefully will come out of my classes like having a solid understanding of what they're doing, Tinkersley said, now I want to hear the dirty joke. Yeah, I don't know if YouTube will let you. All right, so we have our... Okay, I want a little more clear shadow under her. Getting a little sloppy here, but that's okay. I think it's gonna work. I want like more shadow here where she's being laid down, so we feel the weight. Feel the weight of that person being placed down. Paul said, you guys really didn't see my dirty joke. No, we didn't. I think YouTube is YouTube's out to get you, Paul. They've shadow banned you. They don't want to hear the truth. Tankersley said, missed it, Paul. All right. Let's go. I saw this picture on, how like Facebook will have those like memory things, where it's like from 8 years ago. And I saw this picture from my son when he was little. I think I was doing a lot of vlogs back then too. So if you dig back, you could probably find him. But he was obsessed with trains. Like he really liked Thomas the Tank Engine. He just thought Thomas was like the coolest thing in the world. And him and his niece, him and his cousin, my niece, his cousin, were like obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine. They'd like collect the trains and have all the little characters and little tracks and stuff like that. So one time for his birthday, we found out that like this on these Thomas episodes, they had like this ad for like a Thomas Land kind of thing. It's like a Thomas the Tank Engine. You can go on the actual train and stuff like that. And we found out it's in California. So we like, they were doing it in California, like out in like Barstow or something. And so we got him tickets and we went for his birthday. And it must have been his like fourth birthday, maybe fourth or fifth birthday. I think it's 8 years ago. Yeah, it must have been his fourth birthday. Anyhow, so it's funny. There was this picture that I came across. This is like the weird getting older thing, man. They do grow fast because it's like I still remember this pretty vividly. And for him, he probably doesn't remember most of this at all. But yeah, there's a picture of like me and Ben and like Sir Topham Hat, like this guy in this giant Sir Topham Hat uniform. Like outfit, and right next to like these full size, Thomas the Tank Engine things. And I did get hit with that like nostalgic just gut punch of like, man, it goes quick. Like parents always tell you that, when you're a new parent, they're like treasure these moments because it goes fast. But it was like, wow, that's crazy. He's so much older now, and I love like who he is and who he's become and stuff, but it's like there are definitely times where you get hit with that, like, oh man, that's rough to look at. He was so little, Anyhow, but it's pretty cute pictures. And then it reminded me of like when we used to have to watch Thomas the Tank Engine. Eventually I started realizing Sir Topham Hat. Okay. Tankersley said gut punch. Yeah, it was totally a gut punch. I was like, oh man. Luckily, Ben's still like a pretty big silly butt, but it's just funny that like, man, it does go quick. Paul said my son Nate loved trains when he was little. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, and it was cool. Like it was like he was still at that age. Like he was really into the movie Cars too, and at the age he was at there, like. We went to when we went and saw the life-size trains, he like walked up to one like, hey Thomas, like he just started talking like it's like his buddies that he knew. He had no idea that it was just like set up. Like he literally was like, oh, there's Sir Topham Hat, that makes perfect sense. It's like it's like when kids still believe the the princess at Disneyland is a princess, that kind of thing. It was pretty fun. Good memory. But it did remind me, like, I remember at the time, because that's 8 years ago. So I was an art director at that point. And I was learning and taking all these management courses and stuff too, to like become better as a manager. And, the more I learned about management, the more I just started realizing like Sir Topham Hatt is like a horrible like boss. He's like an abusive boss. he's a jerk. I remember watching these Thomas the Tank Engine episodes and being like, Sir Topham Hatt, that is not appropriate. I kept wanting to like, have Sir Topham Hatt have to go to like talk to HR to like figure out how to manage people in a non-destructive way. It's hilarious. Oh, Paul said I typed out again. Y'all didn't see it again. And then Tankersley said I saw it. I haven't seen it. Tankersley said I still haven't gotten over Ozzy. Yeah, that was a rough one, man. Ozzy was pretty cool. I always think it's strange having gone to like I talk about it in two stories a little bit, but I had to go to like a religious school when I was younger, and man, like there's all these funny things we used to have to watch. Like I was talking about this with my sister actually around Halloween. and like around Halloween, we were taking the kids trick or treating, like her kid and my kid, and we were just reminiscing about like weird stuff from our old school that we used to have to go to, and I was asking her if she remembered all the like Satanic Panic videos they used to play us, because they used to play us these like like reenactment. They almost felt like true crime documentaries about like the secular world, and like heavy metal and the occult. And it was like, these like kind of scare tactic videos to try to get kids to like not, listen to like the Dark Lord's music, like that kind of stuff. And I remember Ozzy being like on the top of that list of like, like hardcore conservatives in the 80s who were having the Satanic Panic. Like he was like way up there on that list of like, like this is music that will bring the devil. So I have a fondness for Ozzy because I remember, I mean, honestly, like those are probably like one of them. Oh my gosh, these were so funny. I should look and see if they have them on YouTube. But I remember one of them, they had like a reenactment. So it was like a live chick tract where, these like metalheads like start listening to metal. And then before you know it, I remember this vividly in the cartoon, or not cartoon. It's like a live action thing. Like basically it's like this kid starts getting into like heavy music, and the next thing you know, he's playing D&D. Chris said that's how they get you through rock and roll. It totally is. So I remember they're in this video, it's like, there's these kids, these are like Christian produced videos from like, the 1980s, but they had like this kid, he's like the good kid who goes to church and he's like a wonderful kid. And then he meets like these like metal punks, and like, of course, because it's the 80s, they just kind of like blend them all together. So it's like, metal and punk and death metal and like hair metal, they're all the same in like the eyes. It's all secular music, and all trash. Like, anyhow, so this kid, it's like the well-to-do kid gets sucked in with his friend group and stuff, and then he finally goes to a party, after they've been playing D&D, and like, there's like an announcer who's like, he's slowly opening his soul to the devil kind of thing. These are like the best videos. Paul said, Satanic Panic. I remember seeing Lionel Richie on the list. I mean, come on, Lionel Richie. Yeah, and they just blurred them all together. But anyhow, in this video, I gotta see if I can find this on YouTube. It would be really funny to rewatch as an adult, because I still vividly remember there's this one scene. So he goes to this party with his friends, right? Paul said 3 times a lady. Think about it. That's true. That is true. You know what? They were so focused on, like on metal, and for some reason Meatloaf too. I think because he had the word hell in it on his album title. But they were so focused on that they missed 3 times a lady. They missed the true darkness. The guy who was truly contacting the Dark Lord was was Lionel Richie. Anyhow, so okay, I gotta get through this video description though. So the kid, like, he gets sucked into this friend group and, starts opening these gateways for demonic activity because he's been, slowly, listening to more and more dark music. And then he starts dressing more inappropriately. And then finally, at the peak of it, he gets invited to his friend's house for a party. And they're like, hey, just so you know, we're going to get wild at this party. And he's like, I'm down. I have been listening to dark music. I have given myself away. let's do this. And so he goes to this party, and this is the part I vividly remember. At the party, for some reason, they have like a dining table. It's like a kitchen table where they're all sitting around it and they're eating like people. it's like they start talking about like sacrificing people. And it's like, and then like, you know, it like, this is my vivid memory of it. And then it kind of pans to this guy who's like an unsolved mysteries type guy who's like, well, that's what happens when you give your soul away to the devil. And they're showing these to like elementary school kids. So bizarre. But I remember seeing this. Yeah, Tankersley's like, we're going to sacrifice a goat at this party. Yeah, that was basically the premise. You know, it was like they did like human and goat sacrifices at this party. And it was all the D&D and the dark music that got them ready. It was so wonderful, wonderfully like absurd. There's something kind of charming about that. But I think I found out about a lot of good music through those kind of things. Because I remember one time it was like a thing. This will crack you guys up. It's called Peach Factory. This was a I don't know why they called it Peach Factory. That's so disturbing. Like that to me sounds more like a goat sacrifice kind of thing. But anyhow, after school they'd have this you know, like basically like if my dad or mom had to like be at work, like it was like basically like a daycare that they offered for like working families after school called Peach Factory. And so I'd have to like hang at Peach Factory every once in a while. And nice. Chris was saying human sacrifice parties sounds like college. But anyhow, so I remember going to this Peach Factory thing, right? And at one time they were really invested in these like congressional hearings that were happening. Like I don't know if you guys remember, but there were like congressional hearings that ended up leading to like the PMRC. I think it was called the PMRC. I hope that's correct. I think it was like the Parents Music something. Anyhow, like they were aiming to like ban certain albums. They were like saying that the albums had like secret messages that were backwards in it, and like Two Live Crew I think was at the center of a lot of these, as was like Twisted Sister for some reason. But anyhow, I remember this was like in the news at the time, so we watched, like they would watch these like Christian broadcasting versions of these trials, like kind of like almost like witch trials for like musicians. And I think it was like a Maury Povich or something that we watched as kids that had Jello Biafra on it. And I remember being like I had never heard of the Dead Kennedys. And I remember watching this thing and being like, well, that guy seems to make sense. Like, and they were like, look at these heathens, you know, that kind of thing. And I just saw him speak at this thing. And it kind of had the reverse effect where I was like, I will remember that. I'm going to check out that band. Because like he just made such a good case. Like, I don't know. It was like a Povich, I think a Maury Povich or something, where they were like, let's watch these heathens, you know, kind of thing. And I was like, oh, actually, like, because I think Biafra was like on this like talk show thing that they had like recorded on VHS or something. And his whole point was just like, hey, like, have you guys ever thought about like, you know, if you don't want your kid to listen to like certain music, like maybe being parents, you know, like, and I was like, that's a pretty fair point, Jello. Like, I don't know. I thought it was great. But anyhow, that's kind of the first time I heard of the Dead Kennedys. And I was like, well, now I got to check them out because he sounds pretty rad. Oh yeah, Paul was saying Sandra Day O'Connor was very evil at his church. Yeah, 100%. D. Snyder was one of the D. Snyder, man. Those congressional hearings, man. You can watch those on YouTube. But D. Snyder, I wasn't a Twisted Sister fan. You know, like I don't know, something about the hair metal thing. It just never bit me. I never got bit by the hair metal bug. But I gotta say, man, that's one of the best congressional testimonies I've ever seen. Was D. Snyder just chewing out the PMRC. And I think that's the one. I think that was the one where like it's a congressional hearing and they're literally playing his album backwards and then like slowing it down and going, do you hear him say, do it? He's telling the kid to kill himself. It's like this whole dark thing where they're like trying to say that he recorded the word do it backwards on a song. And I think D. Snyder just kind of pointed out, he's like, wait. He's like, do what? Like, even if I was saying do it, which I didn't record backwards, but let's just give you that. Like, do what? Like, at what point am I telling him what to do? Like, anyhow, it's pretty classic. Do it. But anyhow. Yeah, Paul was saying they put those labels on the records that were basically telling kids buy me. Yeah, 100%, man. Because like nobody wanted like the Walmart version of an album. You know, I remember I really wanted Tribe Called Quest's Low End. I think it was Low End Theory. And I really, really wanted it when I was younger. And I think my parents got it for me, but they got like the Walmart like censored version. And it was so lame. And that wasn't even a dirty album. Like that wasn't even a bad album. Like, but it's just like, I don't know. It's funny. Yeah, I remember occasionally you'd have a relative buy you the censored version of an album and you're like, this sucks. Like, you know, because I don't know if you guys knew that, like, I don't know if you're younger, you may not be familiar, but Walmart, I don't know if they still do. I don't even think they sell albums anymore, but there was this point in time where like Walmart, to like appease like the overly censorious, you know, music panicked people, would sell these like censored versions of like albums. I bet if you looked on YouTube, they'd probably have like Walmart censored albums. But anyhow, it's one of those reasons why, like, anytime I hear people who kind of lean, you know, lean kind of conservative, tell me they don't do cancel culture, I'm like, I remember the 80s. Although I think Tipper Gore, who's Al Gore's wife, she was like the, when I was younger, I had a little bit of a bias against the left because of that. Because I like when I was in bands, like Tipper Gore was like the definition of evil because she was like so into like censoring music. She was like one of the heads of was it the PMRC? I think it was called the PMRC. But anyhow, it's funny. I still vividly, I think it would be fun to like find that. I got to track that video down with the dinner, with the dinner party. The kid who got sucked into a satanic cult because his friends got him into music. It was like, welcome to our club. Paul was saying it's like non-alcoholic beer, 100%. But that was kind of like the cool. I do almost wonder, maybe they were just really big fans of like metal and just trying to make it sell better. Because eventually that almost became like a badge of honor. Like if you didn't have a parental advisory sticker on your album, like what were you doing? You know, making some tame non-rock and roll. And it's so funny too, because it's so cyclical. Like, you know, you think about it, like there were these stories that my parents would tell us about like Elvis. Like Elvis was like shocking when he came out, you know? Dude, like parents at the time when Elvis came out, they were not fans of Elvis. You know, they thought he was just like this sexual deviant, like, you know, and jazz music was like a kind of a similar thing. It was like, you know, when jazz came out, it's like you're listening to the devil's music. Like, this is awful, you know? I feel like what is out there now that's freaking out my generation, because I don't know, man. I don't know. At least the people I know that are my age. Then again, I can't really say that because I'm lucky. I guess I live in California, so I'm not meeting a lot of the, you know, the types that would be Elvis to pelvis. Gasp, said Chris. Yeah, and we all heard that story about like Elvis to pelvis. The funny thing is, some of the people who were telling us that same story were like the very same people who like sold out their own generation by like, you know, attacking the modern kids like music, who are now the older generation that are probably, you know, doing the same thing all over again. The cycle. Yeah, Tankersley said, if you don't have explicit lyric sticker, you may as well be the Fresh Prince. That's a fair point. Speaking of censored, there was a movie called Smokey and the Bandit. Jackie Gleason used to call Burt Reynolds son of a bitch on TV before they came and changed it to Scumbum. That's great. Chris was saying, oh no, K-pop Demon Hunters, because it has the word demon in it. I guess that might be the new one. I haven't seen K-pop Demon Hunters. Everyone seems raving about it. Is it good? Is it for kids? I don't really know what it is. I need to know the premise of this. Is it that they're a K-pop band and they hunt demons? Or is it that there's demons that are in K-pop bands that get hunted? I need to know more, Chris. You have to tell me about it. You're probably aware with your like wild Netflix connections. I almost said collections because it's 1 a.m. Not collections, connections. We're having some coffee. All right. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. Chris said, my 4-year-old loves it. Lots of tropes, but solidly done. I dig it. But what's the premise? Is it that it's demons in K-pop bands, or is it a K-pop band that hunts demons, or is it both? Paul said, my 14-year-old loves K-pop Demon Hunters. Nice. Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, that one has not grabbed my son's soul. I don't want my son eating at a human sacrifice dinner, so I'm going to keep him away from it. I'm just kidding. Paul said she's been into Death Note lately. Death Note is great. There's a live action Death Note movie that my sister-in-law introduced me to that's Japanese, and it's really good. And so that kind of made me a little biased, because anytime I see L now, I want to see the actor who played L in that movie. But yeah, Death Note's really well done. It's a cool idea. It's kind of intriguing. Chris said, K-pop stars who sing to protect the world through a magical barrier made by their songs connecting with fans. So martial arts action plus actually really catchy songs. That is so funny. Do you think they just stole the South Park like there was a South Park episode on this. I don't know if you remember this one. This was like peak South Park. There was a Peruvian flute band ban in South Park because South Park just ended up having all these Peruvian flute bands that were playing like at different shopping malls and stuff, and they kind of like invaded South Park. And so a bunch of people just, start talking about it, realizing nobody likes Peruvian flute bands, so they banned the Peruvian flute bands. And then it turns out that these bands were the reason that like a demon was being held at bay that then invades, and now they need the Peruvian flute bands back. I wonder if they stole that. Did they steal K-pop Demon Hunters from South Park? Because that's kind of the same premise. Chris was saying, I remember that one. That was a great one. Chris, you're in California. Have you seen the results? Did Prop 50 go through? I hope so. Paul said, Chris, I feel like your daughter is growing up in an actual wonderland. Lucky girl. Yeah, Chris is a very creative person, so I can imagine there's going to be a lot of cool stuff there. All right, guys, we're getting there. Just adding a little bit of shadow, light and shadow here. This one's taking a long time. I went down memory lane a little bit ago too to do you guys remember okay, there used to be this beef between Eddie Vedder and Kurt Cobain, and it was, I think, partially manufactured by the press at the time, because like it was like almost like the world of music when it was kind of curated by like MTV and then like music journalists and stuff. So I think every once in a while they'd like pit people against each other. They used to do this a lot with hip hop too, which they still do. I guess I shouldn't say this is an old thing, because I guess they did the same thing with like Kendrick versus Drake. But anyhow, I was just trying to remember what the beef was. Like why did Eddie Vedder and Kurt Cobain like have beef? And like, so I went down this rabbit hole of like watching old Eddie Vedder and Kurt Cobain beefs, and it was like it made me miss the 90s a lot. Because I was like, these were both excellent bands. Nice. Chris said 50 went through. New York got it. Mom Donnie. Jersey's got their Navy pilot lady. Yep. Yeah, I feel like it's a big win if we're allowed to win now. That feels like a big win, but I'm curious if they'll pull strings to kind of undo it. He said, do you think your drawing has gotten better over the course of this book? Yes, like my working in this style has definitely improved. I wouldn't say necessarily my drawing, but just my grasp of this style has gotten significantly better. I don't think it's an improvement that's big enough to where it's going to make a huge, like hopefully it won't be noticeable enough to where I have to like redo a bunch of old pages. I don't think it's that big of an improvement, but yes, I've definitely gotten better at this particular style. Like I kind of know the process a little bit more. I don't like what I did with her face though. That's kind of weird. I need a clearer light source here. It's just a weird angle to get. Let me think of my light here. Okay, so light's coming here. Oh, I listened to this band called The Anniversary today too. Paul said this style, very good insight. Yeah, I think my drawings, progressively I get better at drawing. Teaching drawing makes me a lot better at drawing. Because and anybody who teaches art will tell you this, but it's like to have to teach fundamentals, it's like my grasp of perspective has gone up quite significantly from just having to teach perspective a bunch, and just refreshing myself on like rendering and color theory and stuff like that. I think it makes me revisit and relearn some of those basics. Some of it which you kind of know intuitively, but just by having to think through it and explain it, I think it makes you understand it a little better. Because there's a lot of stuff we do that we don't really explain, or we forget that you have to explain, and like, so to go back to like a clean slate and have to kind of explain it, is a good kind of practice. Paul said, I like the Taylor Swift versus everyone beef best. I kind of get the Eddie Vedder one, because like what happened was you had this kind of like pure, I mean, this is the tale, but you basically had all these bands in Seattle that were kind of blowing up, but they weren't blowing up out of nowhere. Like they were huge in like Seattle and just kind of trapped in Seattle because there was no like Seattle music scene at the time. And, you had kind of these varying styles. And one of the bands was this band called like Mother Love Bone, which by the way, Eddie Vedder, in my opinion, is so much better than the front man for Mother Love Bone, because they were just kind of like almost like a spin doctory, like, metal-y, like hair metal band almost. Like they were very much on the butt rock end of the spectrum for like Seattle bands. Very talented, but just, but they were friends with a lot of the guys in Seattle and stuff. And you have kind of like, Nirvana, which is like they're, on Sub Pop, they're like in the Seattle scene. They kind of start, getting some traction and stuff like that. And then you have Mother Love Bone, like their lead singer passes, and it's this like, thing where they create like Temple of the Dog, as like a tribute album. And all of a sudden there's this dude from California who, I think the drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers is friends with, and is like, hey, you should try out for like the guys from Mother Love Bone. Cause like they, Paul Pate said Mother Love Bone. That's brilliant. Yeah. And Tankersley said, Say Hello to Heaven was about him. Yeah. And so it's like, you have like all these guys from the Seattle scene kind of doing their like tribute. And then you have this guy, Eddie Vedder, who's like a surfer from California who basically like joins Mother Love Bone, except now it's called Pearl Jam. And I'm waxing over a lot of it, but the gist is that, nobody had heard Pearl Jam. And so like all of a sudden this band just kind of comes out of nowhere. Like they haven't gigged locally. They haven't like sold out crazy shows or anything like that. A lot of the guys in the band are in Seattle, but they were already known as like a kind of more commercial version of the sound they were doing. Paul Pate said, "Did you say butt rock? What's that?" That's the term. Like, because I'm a late '80s, or like I was a teenager in the '90s. That's what '90s kids would call like, hair metal from the '80s was called butt rock. But anyhow, so you had this whole kind of conflict, because when like the second Eddie Vedder joined the guys from Mother Love Bone, they had a record deal and they were huge. They just blew up. They like exploded. Like they were very big, very quick, and they were like globally big. And then suddenly people are like interviewing Eddie Vedder, like, do you guys feel like you're representing the Seattle sound? And this guy's like speaking for Seattle all of a sudden. He's not even from Seattle. So all these local Seattle bands like Nirvana, right, who are legitimately from Seattle, although funnily enough, like Dave Grohl's from Washington, D.C., but still. Anyhow, they feel like they have a legitimate claim on the Seattle scene. Felt like, I think Kurt felt like they were kind of posers, like they were, more kind of like, but I also think a lot of that was blown up by the media. And I think in retrospect, it's like you look back at it, there was just so much good music at the time. And in my opinion, Pearl Jam's an amazing band. I think Pearl Jam is up there with like the best bands from that era, as is Nirvana, but it was just funny to relook at that beef. But I remember when I was younger, there was a movie called Singles. Do you guys remember Singles? That was like a classic 90s movie. It was Cameron Crowe. And the whole premise of it was, following like single people in Seattle. And it's notorious because it had a lot of, cameos of like Seattle musicians at the time. So like Chris Cornell's in it, and I think Soundgarden's actually in it. And then Eddie Vedder is actually a character in it named Eddie Vedder, but he's a drummer. It's a very funny movie. But anyhow, it just brought me back to that whole thing. Paul said, butt rock. That's also brilliant. This stream is peak educational. Yeah, so anyhow, people who wanted to play, like, for instance, when I was younger, in the AV, in the area, we would play music, and there was like not a lot of venues out here, but there was a bar at the time. It's still around, but it's not like really known as like the peak music area anymore. But back in the day, it was like the only real venue that had like a good sound system, and it was called Schooners, and they had a battle of the bands. And this was like one of the key ways you could get like, local people to like follow your music and stuff, was to do the battle of the bands. So we would play battle of the bands like every year. We never won, but we'd always play. But you'd always get beaten by like some butt rock band, and we'd always call them butt rock bands. But it was like, because they're all the guys who were like, 10 or 15 years older than us wanted to hear like shreddy solos and like metal stuff, and we'd be playing like, like Pavement, Pixies type stuff. And like, meanwhile, like the guy who goes up there and covers like Rat or something like those, that would be the bands that won Battle of the Bands usually were like cover bands that played, She's My Cherry Pie or something, like, so that, I think that's why we, I don't know. And I've since, like, as I've gotten older, I've like, again, I was very judgmental when I was younger. I've talked about this a bit, but I feel like there's a lot of good music, even among that, like, even when I like in the 90s, I didn't even really like, this is going to be horrible to say, but I wasn't even like I didn't really like Guns N' Roses as a kid. And we would listen to Guns N' Roses like semi-ironically, because I feel like my generation, we just weren't, Guns N' Roses just wasn't where it was at for us. It was like, by that point, we were kind of the Nirvana generation, like that was kind of the stuff that like, clicked with us. And like, I'd say like Chris can probably attest to this too, but like, like Weezer's Blue album, and maybe Counting Crows, August and Everything After. Like, there's some really key albums that kind of came out. But like, for some reason, Guns N' Roses was never really big on that list. so it wasn't until I was like older that I realized like how rad Guns N' Roses is. Like they're so good and they're fun. And a lot of that music from the 80s is like fun. Like there's kind of nothing wrong with some of it. Some of it was pretty bad though. I'm kind of glad it broke a little bit because you know, I do think it might be kind of sad if we lived in a world where you know, every guy in a band was wearing tights and had like feathered hair and you know, would do gymnastics on stage or something. But I have noticed that style of music has come back. Yeah, Chris was saying I barely know music, but even I know some Guns N' Roses. But yeah, like for some reason, I'm just saying like I feel like our generation, Guns N' Roses just wasn't like our jam. Like it wasn't something we didn't know. It's just like it wasn't kind of like where the cool kids were at the time. So I don't know. It's interesting to like, it's interesting to see these different cycles, you know, because like, for instance, like a lot of guys I know that are like maybe 5 years older than me, I'd say like 5 years. We have a ton in common with like musical tastes and memories and stuff. But then there's this reverence for Kiss that, you know, like Scott's just a tiny bit older than me, and you know, like, or Kevin Cross, like a little bit older than me, and there's this like insane like love for Kiss. Like Kiss is like this big thing. I think Paul, maybe your generation too. And I was just too, I think by the time I was a kid, there weren't like Kiss toys and Kiss comics, and it wasn't like the big epic that it was like, you know, 4 years prior. So like, had I been born like 4 years prior to that, I'd probably have that like real nostalgic, you know, connection to Kiss. But yeah, anyhow, it's just it's interesting how that works with music. Paul said, I used to work in a bar in Flint that had a singing contest called Shooting Star. It was for cheesy singers doing Whitney Houston songs and stuff. Pretty amazing talent came through though. Well, Paul, you are quite the karaoke king. And we need to do karaoke at some point. We should, I don't know. Next time you're in California, Paul, we need to get Lujan. We got to talk Corey into it. We got to get the team together and rock some karaoke. I think that would be pretty amazing. Because I do like me some karaoke. I'm not good at it though. Paul is actually, no joke, like incredible at karaoke. But yeah, but it was just funny to like go back and think about just like the drama in music where it's like Pearl Jam's not real, Nirvana is real. Like, I don't know. And then there were a whole bunch of people who were like, Nirvana's not real. Like it's just so much like so much youth is spending time like focusing on who's real and who's not. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, Chris. Chris did say Kiss Psycho Circus comic kept being mentioned in Wizard, but he had no idea what it was about. Same here, yeah. Like, it just seemed like an older, you know, like my brothers might be kind of there. Paul said, definitely a Cali trip in my future. Cool. Well, the cool thing is I get summers off now, so as long as there's enough notice and I'm not like traveling somewhere, summer-ish things can actually happen now, which is kind of exciting. That was one of the funnest things this last summer, was to have an actual summer. Like, you know, obviously working on comics, because there is no rest. There's no sleep till you're dead, right? So you don't stop comics. You don't quit comics. You can't quit comics. Anyhow. But other than that, it was nice. It was nice to have like just a summer where all I had to do was focus on comics, prepping a little bit for school, maybe a little freelance here and there, but mostly just having like a whole summer to just work on the book was really cool. Chris said, visit Disneyland and you'll be right in my backyard. Actually, summer would be a really good time to get together and maybe do like we should do like a Long Beach meetup or a HB meetup or something in that area. Cowagoo, we should get all the Long Beach crew to meet up this summer. That would actually be really fun. Maybe we could just have like a little bar crawl or something. Chris, did you hear we had Erwin Papa on Artcasters? He's like local to Long Beach and does like a drink and draw up there. And I was like, oh man, I know you're not like as close to Long Beach as you used to be, but I was like, if I was closer, I would want to cruise by that drink and draw. It sounds kind of fun. But I do think we should try to let's get a little shindig going this summer. Let's get all the crew back on the road. All our old peeps. I was just talking about that with some of my students where I think young artists sometimes have a problem, not a problem, but like they get intimidated if they're in a class full of artists that are better than them. And sometimes they'll take the wrong approach and kind of shut down from that. And I was describing to a couple kids what our college class was like, because I really do attribute one of the reasons as to why I got okay at art was, being in school with like you and Brandon and Oksana and Philip and like Jeremy and all these like just crazy talented people. It was like that, I think, almost more than even the teaching that was happening. I feel like just being surrounded by artists who were really, really good made me up my game like significantly. Paul said, get the band back together. Nice to know a local in-person events are still going on. Yeah, Chris said that their next one's going to be at Alex's, which I was like, oh, you got to go. Like for me, that's a trek, but for you, I don't think that would be too bad. So you should connect with Erwin, Chris. Okay, we have shading. We have I forgot, Paul, you and I are in a band. We're in the band New Direction. Paul is a member. We should get the band back together. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. It's always fun to see people I care about and love doing art with online. So thanks for hanging with me while I'm up at the wee hours. I would love if I was invincible and could stay up longer and get into colors. But I think we're just going to have to call it for the night, and I'll color this tomorrow. So Paul said, good news. I think I might be falling back to sleep. I'm surprised I didn't put you to sleep. Chris said, since the kiddo, I haven't been to a bar in a while. Yeah, that'll happen. Even now, I don't get to go out as much. Like every once in a while I will, but yeah, it's especially when they're real young, it's occupying of all your time. But like I said, it's like, looking back, man, I don't know, like, would I have wanted to be at a bar rather than at Thomas and Friends with like a cute little 4-year-old Ben who was all stoked? Like, I don't know. I wouldn't give that back to anyone for anything, so, but it is nice when they're that little to occasionally maybe have like one night out, like a drink and draw or something like that. All right, guys. I'm gonna call it. Chris, thanks for showing up. Paul, thanks for showing up. Tankersley, thanks for showing up. Yeah, and if you guys watch this after the fact, make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications, all that kind of stuff. Chris, I'm hoping next year we can do the Halloween thing at your place. That would be fun, because Chris does a mad Halloween bash, so that would be super fun. So we'll have to do that next year. This year I couldn't because Mai was in Japan, and so I was single dadding it for like a good 2 weeks. But maybe next year we can like make that happen, because it'd be fun. All right, guys. I will see you guys on the next thing, which will be tomorrow, and maybe a little earlier, because I don't have class tomorrow night. So I will see you guys later, and check out Empty Rooms. Listen to Empty Rooms on Spotify or music streaming platforms, or get it on Apple Music. Give it a listen. Let me know what you guys think. All right, I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for showing up, and bye.